Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to this week's free Qdabra webinar. My name is Jimmy, and I will be your presenter for today. And today we're talking about some of the new features in FormsViewer 2.2. And looks like I might be having some audio trouble. So hello, welcome to this week's webinar. My name is Jimmy, and we're going to be talking about the new features in FormsViewer 2.2. So let's get started. So just to give you a quick rundown of our new features, we've got a new qRules injection feature in FormsViewer. So for those of you who don't have the FormsViewer the qRules injector or don't have a qRules license, you will now be able to inject qRules into your form. It looks like I see some hands raised. Just a moment. Okay. Okay, it looks like the hands have gone down. So yes, as of the new FormsViewer version, you don't need to have the qRules injector to inject qRules into your forms, and I will go into some of the details of that as we move on. You can reduce your debugging troubles and having to flip through a PDF when you're putting your qRules together with our new qRules command builder. It's a nice browser-based interface for putting together qRules commands. You can create and modify SharePoint list mappings right in your browser. You don't have to install an InfoPath form for that anymore, or have to deal with exporting XML files and loading them into your form. So that's a really cool feature I'm looking forward to showing you. You can use date formats in your date pickers. Less carbon emissions, more globally sensitive. I'll have a quick look at that a little later. And a couple more things like organizing your templates into groups. So first of all, we've got an ad here. Why FormsViewer? Before the storms, migrate your InfoPath forms. We invented FormsViewer with InfoPath form developers in mind. Uncertain about the future of what SharePoint and SharePoint's InfoPath support will bring, FormsViewer is here to keep you going with your forms. Better performance, FormsViewer runs right in your client side of your browser rather than having a lot of stuff on the server side. So for the most part, while you're working with your forms and filling them out, it's a lot faster, a lot fewer postbacks. More features, FormsViewer has qRules built in so that it's ready to go, and we're adding new features all the time. We'll reduce prototyping time. You can drag your form into the browser in seconds instead of having to wait minutes to publish it. And a couple of great features coming up soon, like the qRules builder, logic debugger in 2.3, and a data source fixer in 2.4 are our upcoming and planned features. And some links at the bottom if you want more info. So before we go on, just a quick poll to get a sense of how many of you are using FormsViewer. So here, I'll just put up that poll on the screen. All right. Okay, the results are in, and it looks like about a quarter of you are using FormsViewer right now. So for those of you who are not familiar with FormsViewer yet, it's our new platform for using InfoPath forms right in your browser currently has integration with SharePoint, but we're looking to move it outside of SharePoint as well. And it's just great for keeping your InfoPath forms in business when the support goes out for it on SharePoint. So let's look at the first demo we've got here, which is injecting a form with qRules. So we're going to switch over to a form I have prepared here. We're going to have a look at our trusty expense report form. And as you can see in this form, from the fields pane, it doesn't have a data source dropdown, which means it doesn't have any data sources other than the main one. It's got some submit connections, but no receive connections. So no qRules in this form at the moment. So we're going to add it right after this. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into my FormsViewer, which I have open here, and I'll go into Manage Templates. And as you can see, this is a dev version of FormsViewer. These features are still in works. We're still hashing out a couple of the rough edges, and we're going to be releasing a new fully improved version of these features in 1 week or so. So now I'm at Manage Templates. I'm going to go to Upload a new template, and I'm going to take my expense report, just drag it in here, and I'll call this expense report -demo. Okay, I'll upload that here. Okay, just took a couple seconds there. And we're going to go back to the templates list. And this, for those of you familiar with FormsViewer, this might be new to you. We've now got categorization here that I'll talk a bit more about later. But by default, forms are added to the uncategorized group, so I'll expand that. And we can see my expense report demo is here in the list, so I'm going to go ahead and open up the diagnostics view, and I'll full screen this, this browser here. Okay, now I'm going to go over to qRules in the Form tab, and the diagnostics has detected that the form doesn't contain qRules. I'm going to click the Manage qRules button here, which is going to take me to a view we're going to look at quite a bit during this webinar. So here again, we're at the qRules builder, and it's detecting that the form does not have qRules in it. So I'm just going to go ahead here and click Inject qRules. Just wait a couple seconds, we get a success prompt, and there we go. Now if I go back here and look at my form, download it here. And we can see now that the fields is showing a drop down, and we've got Qdabra rules. It's all ready to go for us to start executing commands on it. So that's a nifty feature. You don't need to install the injector anymore. One thing to note here is that there is a slight difference between, well, a rather large difference actually, between the injector and this feature, which is that this feature only adds the Qdabra rules data source to the form. It does not add the DLL to it. So what that means is that FormsViewer will only requires the data source to be present in order to run qRules commands. But if you were to preview this form or deploy it as a filler form, it wouldn't actually run the qRules because the DLL is not in there. So just one thing to keep in mind, this feature is specifically for FormsViewer only forms when you want to use qRules in FormsViewer. So keep that in mind. One benefit there is that it keeps the form nice and lightweight. It's still only 45 kilobytes as opposed to several hundred or a megabyte if it has the DLL in it. So next we're going to go back to our qRules builder view, and let me just check what's up next on the presentation is build qRules commands. Okay, so we're already on the Manage qRules page, and now that we've injected qRules into the form, we can see this qRules mapping tab, which allows us to build commands with a handy builder. So let's just start out with something simple like copy table. So what this gives you is it automatically lists all the parameters that are involved in a command and just lets you fill them out one by one. So and it also a nice thing here is that it changes its behavior depending on the type of parameter you've got. So for example, these 4 parameters, table source, row dest, etc., are XPaths. So it gives me a nice XPath selector to pick the XPath that I want to use here. So I want item here, just for example. Row source would be a child of item, or actually items would be the table source for that, and row source would be item, I believe. Haven't used the copy table command recently. So item. And this would actually be a relative path. We're adding functionality to sort of tie these parameters together so that the relative paths would show just as the relative portion, but we don't quite have that yet, but that would be a feature that's coming soon. We can see down here that we've got some parameters of other types. So DS name source, I've selected a main data source up above. So let's say I was copying to a different data source. Right now, Qdabra is the only other data source I have, but if I had other ones, I could select them as well. So that's pretty handy. Another thing here is dynamic. So oftentimes you want to dynamically. Well, first before we go to that, let's check out this generate command button. So I'll click generate command. Oh, that's telling me I need values for these, so I'll just put in some dummy values there to keep things moving along. And there we go. So there it has built up the whole command for me, and I can just paste that right into the form. So let's say that I wanted to determine the destination data source dynamically. This way I can determine that value based on the contents of a field. And I'm just going to pick a field at random here. I'll go with current tab. And so what happens here is that when I generate this command, instead of just being a static value, it's actually giving me a concat formula where it's concatenating in that value to provide the value of ds name dest. And I know this is a detail about qRules that often trips people up. So hopefully the features provided in this builder make that just a little easier for people. So that is our qRules builder. Looking forward to getting that out and having it polished off. Okay, so next up is create a list mapping. So as some of you may be familiar with, one very popular feature of qRules is the ability to have your forms submit to SharePoint lists. Up to now, the way you've done that is we provide a special form for building up those mappings. That form exports an XML file that you put into your form, and then you would run a qRules command to do the actual submit. What we're giving you in this next release of FormsViewer is the ability to build those mappings and put them into your form right from your browser, which is pretty handy. So back to the browser, we'll see we're still in the qRules builder, and there's another tab here called the SharePoint mapping tool. So I'm just going to switch over to that. So at this point, it's detecting that there are no mappings in the form just yet. So I'm going to click Add a Top-Level Mapping. And I'll call this Mapping, which is the default value that we usually use for mapping file names. This field here is the name of the actual mapping data source to be added to your form. So what we've got here is that right off the bat, it detects all the SharePoint lists in the site where the form is published. So we've just got two lists there right now, expense report lines and microfeed. So since I'm working with the expense report form, I want to submit some line items out to expense report lines. So there I've picked that. And since they're line items, they're going to be a repeating group, which is this one right here. He's the item group. So I'm going to pick that. And down here, I'm going to pick my fields. So I know that I have 4 fields that I need to map to, so I'm just going to fill in 4 right there. And then I need to pick the field. So the first one I need is an ID field, which is going to keep track of which list ID or which list item ID each row has been submitted to, so that it can be updated. Now we have a bit of a bug here where it's not correctly selecting the field, so just bear with me. We're going to have this fixed by the time the feature is released, of course, but let's give that another try. Okay, there we go. So list item ID is the first field. I'm going to map that to the SharePoint column ID. This is a little different from the way the original tool worked. Previously in the tool, you would have to expand some checkboxes and check a box to indicate that it was an ID. What we're doing now to make it a little more intuitive is just to say you can map it directly to the ID column, and then this drop down over here detects the type of column that it is, which is an ID column. Okay, so on to our next field, which is date. Description. Oops. Misclicked there. And the last one is amount. And I'm going to map the date to the date column, description to the title column, and amount to the amount column. And we can see over here one more neat thing is that because I selected a date column, it automatically detects that the mapping has to indicate it's a date column. So that's automatically here. This is something that used to trip people up a lot, which is that they'd forget to check the date box and the mapping wouldn't work. So aside from allowing you to build your mappings in the browser, we're also adding features to make this mapping tool a little more easier to use. So hopefully that's helpful to a lot of people. Okay, so now I've set up all my values for the mapping. I'm going to go ahead and click Inject Mapping here. All right, it's been injected. And just to show you it was actually injected, we'll download the form again here. And we see now that in addition to Qdabra rules, we have a data source called mapping. It's got the schema of a typical mapping, and we've also got a resource file called mapping XML there in the form. So that button right there just took care of adding that mapping to our form. And another thing you might notice is that once I've saved, it also gives a drop down of the mappings. So if I were to refresh this page, go to mapping tool again, I can select that mapping and it'll load it right in there for me. So we're all good to go and modify that mapping again. All right, so we've got a mapping, but what we need now is to add the actual qRules command to run it. So we'll go back to our mapping builder here, or the qRules builder here, and I'll going to use a submit to SharePoint list command. Nice type ahead feature here in the drop down as well. All right, so I'm going to leave submit off for now. Mapping is going to be the mapping file. Mapping name is, by default, that would be the name of the list. So I'm going to call this, what's the list called? Expense report lines. Okay. And I believe I can leave everything else blank here. So I'll go ahead and generate that command. And I'm going to go back into that form I just downloaded. Go down to our submit button. And I will disable the existing submit action. Add a new one. Submit to list. I'm going to set a field's value. We're going to set the qRules command field here to this value and paste that in. And one little bit I need to add manually right now because of a limitation in the qRules builder we're planning to fix very soon, is I'll need to indicate the submit name. I've already added a submit connection called SharePoint list submit, so I'll use that here. The reason I have to type this in manually is that right now the builder only lists data sources, not data connections, so it doesn't see that SharePoint list submit even though it's in the form. We'll get that fixed before we release this feature. And okay, I'm going to save that to my folder here. Okay. And we'll just upload that back up again. Update. All right. So we can see that my expense report lines here, list here has 5 items. So let's open up the form and try to add a couple more items to that list. So I won't fill out the initial details since this is just a demo of this submit feature. So I'm just going to pick some dates here. I'll pick August 8th, lunch with clients, meal 35, and just say travel to lunch. $12. All right, I've filled out my values. I'm going to come down here and click submit. There it goes, submitting. And if everything went well, there are new list items. Got lunch for clients on August 8th, $35. Travel to lunch, $12. And let's say I wanted to be a little more specific here. Travel to lunch at pizzeria. And let's say I needed to travel back as well. A little cheaper in the evening. I'm going to submit that again. Refresh my list. And what we see here is that the travel to lunch item has been updated to have the new value. Travel back item has been added, and we've got no duplication. So that's all working well. Okay. So back to our slide deck here. So date formats. A few of our customers who are outside the US have mentioned that they have some trouble with our date pickers. namely that up to now they've only displayed the dates in US format. So we've taken care of this as far as date pickers go. They now support the ability to use non-US dates in a variety of formats, actually. We can see here from this screenshot that I'm using two date pickers in the form. One is in US format and another is in UK format, so you could even mix and match if you absolutely wanted to. But the point we're showing here is that you can use more than one format in a form and not just a single format. So let's have a look at that in action. You can see that one from the screenshot is using just numerics. So let's do something a little fancier, which is this format, or maybe we'll go with this one. So date, month, name, and then the year. Okay. So I've just modified that right here. I'll save it. Go back to my form. Upload. Update. Okay, now I'm going to open the form here. And we can see that when I pick a date from this calendar, it shows in that nice month, date, month, year format. So that's pretty neat. I can also even modify it when it's in this format. If I wanted to just manually change it to the 2nd of August, that actually updates the underlying value to August 2nd. So pretty handy update. Now, currently this update only applies to date pickers, and for this particular release, date pickers are the only change we're focusing as far as the date formats, but we will definitely be looking to support formats in other controls such as text boxes in the very near future. All right, so on to our last little demo we have here. And before I move on to the demo, I just got another poll for you. I'm curious to see how many form templates each of you are using. So there should be a poll up on your screen. Just let me know if you're less than 5, 6 to 10, and whatnot. All right, the results are in. And so you can see those results up there now. A little surprising, a whole third of you are using more than 21 forms. So that's quite a lot. I wasn't expecting so many people to have that many forms. Also a fair number of people using 11 to 20. Almost half of you using 6 to 10, and the minority are using less than 5. So pretty interesting results. So for those of you using a lot of forms, this next feature should be a bit of a help in FormsViewer. And I alluded to this earlier, but FormsViewer will now allow you to categorize your forms. So let's go see that in action. So as of now, my expense report demo is in the uncategorized group, and we don't have any groups in this site since all of them have been uncategorized up to this point. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this in the expenses group. All right, back to templates. And what we can see here now is that there's now an expenses group here, which I can expand and see that one form. If I look here, I can see a couple more expense report forms that I've been working on. This one from earlier today is expense report, so I'll go ahead and open this one. And we open this, we see that the drop-down already has that expenses option there, so I'm going to pick that. Back to templates. And just for completeness, we'll do this one more. All right, so now we've got two groups. Expenses has 3 forms in it, and uncategorized has 5. Let's go ahead and make one more group there. So we'll put this in the qRules test group, since this is a form for testing qRules feature. All right, so now we can see the, looks like something might have gone wrong there, but nope, it's there in the qRules test group. And this one is named qRules test, so that one's got to go in that group there. But for some reason, qRules test is not listed in that drop-down, so there's a bug we've got to report. But as you can see here, this is a pretty nifty feature that will allow you to organize your forms. So for those of you who are using lots and lots of forms, I hope this provides a lot of value to you. Okay, so that's it for our demo. I've got one more poll for you guys here, just to, whoops, didn't mean to do that. So just to wrap things up, I'd like to hear your opinions about what you thought of these commands, so let us know what you thought were the most interesting. All right. So there are results here. About 2/3 of you like the qRules builder, which is great. We've put a lot of work in that. We're going to be fixing it up right before we release it. And 1/4 of you like the integrated mapping editor. That's actually a personal favorite of mine. I think that's going to make managing those lists mappings a whole lot easier. So I'm glad that some of you are looking forward to these features. So we're going to open up the floor to questions now. So let me know if you have any questions. If you just have some feedback about what you've seen today or about FormsViewer in general, we'd definitely love to hear that as well. So just let us know. We've got a question here. When is the release expected? As you can see here, we've got a few kinks to still work out here, but we're trying to get the release out as soon as possible. We think probably in about a week or two we'll be able to get it out. That's a little later than we were planning, but we are trying to get it out as quickly as possible. Okay. All right. Looks like that's it as far as questions go for today. We've got a survey waiting for you after this webinar, so we'd definitely appreciate it if you fill that out and give us your thoughts, and we hope to see you again at the next webinar. Thank you for coming. Bye for now.